So speaking about the playoffs and the matchup against the Tampa Bay Lightning, what are your thoughts right now? Because ever since we kind of bashed the Lightning and said they're having their worst season of this whole dynasty era, and I know the dynasty kind of goes back to that first run to the Cup final that came a few years before this run to three straight Stanley Cup finals. But over the last 4 years, I think it's still safe to say this is the worst Tampa Bay Lightning team of the last 4 years. But anyway, since we said that, the Lightning have gone 3-0 and outscored their opponents 14-1. You can't make this up. So at this point, the Leafs have a 4-point lead on Tampa with 1 game in hand, and there are 6 games left on Toronto's schedule. Is there any way that the Leafs blow this and don't secure home ice in the first round of the playoffs?
As you're saying that, Bruno, I would have liked that extra point from the Florida game and 2 points last night against the Red Wings. So we really would be sitting pretty. Is there a chance? I mean, there's a chance they blow this, and especially, as you mentioned, with Tampa being on a tear. I look at the schedule and I see Columbus, a team that's trying to lose. And then we have Boston. I mean, I'd like to say Boston's a team that's just chilling, but apparently not. So who knows what happens in that one. And then we have Montreal on Saturday. So I assumed that the scratching of players last night had to do with having Columbus and Montreal in the radar to say, hey, if we have those 2 games in hand, let's say we just dial in on those games versus the Canadians and Jackets to get the 4 points. You're at a point now where Tampa's pretty well going to run the table. But at the same time, the Leafs can't relax in this situation, because the last thing you want is that game against Tampa, your second last game of the season, to matter. Because even at that point, let's say you're 3 points ahead and you go into that game and you lose. Well, you're 1 point ahead. If Tampa's got, I don't know the schedule. I assume they finish. Is that Tampa's last game or maybe second last game? We have to look that up. But you don't want a situation where
check your schedule right now. So Tampa's last game, Lepore, it's Leafs and then Detroit to end the season.
So perfect. So do you want us in a situation where, say, we're 3 points ahead of Tampa going into that game? They beat us, so now we're 1 point, and then we have to go into New York and they're playing Detroit. So we have all this pressure in the last game for home ice. So I'm not going to say they have to put their foot to the floor and go full throttle the rest of the way, but it's not a complete chill zone either as far as how they have to approach these last few games, Bruno.
I used to think that this didn't matter too much in terms of who got home ice. I said, we've seen the Leafs lose in the first round of the playoffs with home ice advantage, without home ice advantage, holding a 3-2 lead in the series, holding a 3-1 lead in the series. And to a certain extent, I still think that it kind of doesn't matter. But the more that I look at some of the stats, it worries me a little bit because of this, Lepore. The Leafs and Lightning have been so dominant at home this year. Outside of Boston, who has the best home record in the NHL by a significant margin, they are 31-4-3 at TD Garden. The Lightning have the second best home record in the league, and the Leafs have the third best home record in the league.
Wow.
So the Leafs and Lightning have been 2 of the top 3 teams on home ice this season. But when you look at the road, and I talked about this on a previous show, the Leafs right now have the 12th best road record in the NHL, which is fine. They're 20-13-4 on the road. But Lepore, the Lightning stink on the road. They are under 500 on the road.
Wow.
They're 18-19-1. That's the 21st ranked road record in the NHL. So wow. I think when you think about this and this season in a vacuum, this Lightning team is basically Jekyll and Hyde at home and then on the road. So if you can secure home ice advantage, considering how poor they have been on the road this season, you got to do it, man. So again, I thought that it kind of didn't matter because we've seen the Leafs lose with every possible advantage, even when they've been at a disadvantage. But man, seeing this Lightning road record this year, you got to take advantage and secure home ice.
Yeah, 18-19-1. And then you really do break it down. I'd like to look up how many shootout and overtime wins they have in those 18 wins. Because if they have, say, 4, as an example, well, then they're really 14-19-5 at home.
Yeah, so they
right?
have 13 regulation wins out of those 18.
That's horrible then. So then they're 13, 19, and 6 at home. If you call shootout and overtime games ties.
Yeah, they have 2 shootout wins, and then I guess what would that be? 3 overtime wins.
That's a terrible record. Like, I'd like to see where they would stand if you did that to everyone, if you just called overtimes and shootouts a wash. That's brutal, man. Now, okay, I was motivated for the Leafs to get home ice advantage, Bruno. But after you spit out those numbers, I knew Tampa wasn't the greatest at home. I didn't know that was the case. So, okay, thanks for giving me the anxiety for the rest of the regular season, Bruno. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's something to think about. And then if you look at the Leafs road record, of their 20 wins on the road, they have won 18 of those in regulation.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, so it's yeah, I mean, if you weren't already scared, maybe this is going to scare you a little bit more, because if the Leafs aren't able to hang on to home ice, it's going to take away a pretty big advantage, maybe a bigger advantage than it would be in past seasons, because this Lightning team, like I said, think about everything they have accomplished over the last 3+ years. Now, this being the 4th year of this run, and they are under 500 on the road. There are 20 teams in the NHL this season with a better road record than the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, think about that for a second.
Yeah, and like I said,
Jekyll and Hyde, man.
Like I said, if you adjust the shootouts and overtimes, they're well below 500. Crazy, man. Crazy.